let's be real. If you're kicking off a retail or wholesale business in Missouri, double taxation is basically a fast track to draining your startup capital. Seriously, paying sales tax on items you're literally just going to turn around and sell to someone else, that eats right into your hard-earned margins. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through exactly how you can legally slash those upfront costs and protect your profits by getting your hands on a Missouri resale certificate. Just imagine buying your entire starting inventory completely tax-free. Think about it. That means way more cash flow for your operations or maybe that marketing campaign you've been eyeing. That is the true power of the Missouri resale certificate. But, to actually use it, you've got to follow some pretty strict rules. And trust me, a single mistake can trigger some heavy audit penalties. So we need to get this right. We're going to cover everything you need to know in 5 clear steps. First, the resale certificate basics. Second, applying for your certificate. Third, using your certificate correctly. Fourth, compliance and common mistakes. And finally, FAQs and final tips. Let's dive right in. Okay, Section 1, the resale certificate basics. Let's understand the fundamentals. So, fun fact right off the bat, a resale certificate isn't actually called a resale certificate on the Missouri State website. It's officially known as Missouri Form 149, or the Sales and Use Tax Exemption Certificate. Basically, this document is your golden ticket. It allows your business to purchase inventory strictly intended for resale without paying that upfront state sales tax. The whole idea here is just to prevent double taxation, making absolutely sure the state only collects sales tax once, which is at the final retail level when your end consumer actually buys the product. Now, the big question, are you eligible? If you're a Missouri-based retailer, you absolutely need a Missouri retail sales tax license to use Form 149. But what if you're an out-of-state seller without a physical presence or nexus in Missouri? Well, good news. You can still buy tax-free in Missouri just by using your home state's tax ID number on the form. Wholesalers and manufacturers qualify too, though they only need a Missouri tax ID, not necessarily a full retail license. Oh, and if you're a vehicle dealer, you've got your own specific set of rules utilizing a Missouri dealer license number. Moving right along to Section 2, applying for your certificate. This is your step-by-step guide. Okay, so the application process is strictly chronological. You really can't just download Form 149, scribble on it, and start shopping. Step 1 is the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite. You have to secure a Missouri tax ID by registering your business with the state. You'll do that using Form 2643. Once you actually have that ID in hand, Step 2 is gathering all your basic business info, like your legal name and your federal employer identification number. And then, finally, in Step 3, you actually get to complete Form 149. Let's zoom in on that first step. You're going to need Form 2643, which is the Missouri Tax Registration Application. Filing this generates your Missouri tax ID. Now, while it is a paper form that you can snail mail in, you can actually complete this entire shebang online via the My Tax Missouri portal. I highly recommend going the online route, mostly because you'll typically get your tax ID and PIN back within just 2 business days. It's way faster. When you're filling out Form 2643, precision is absolutely key. You've got to be super careful when selecting your ownership type, whether you're an LLC, a sole proprietor, or a corporation, and you'll need to provide your charter number from the Secretary of State. You also have to select the exact tax types you are applying for. For instance, if you're selling tangible goods, you'll be checking retail sales. But if you're an out-of-state seller registering to collect tax in Missouri, you're actually looking for the vendor's use tax. Just take your time here. All right, I need to clear up a massive beginner misconception right now. Form 149 is not submitted to the state. Let me repeat that. Once you register and get your tax ID, you download Form 149, fill it out yourself, and then you physically hand it directly to your vendors or suppliers. They're the ones who keep it on file to justify to the state why they didn't charge you sales tax. You literally do not mail Form 149 to the Department of Revenue. Which brings us to Section 3, using your certificate correctly. Let's put this theory into practice. We really have to consider the boundaries of this certificate. For example, buying 100 t-shirts from a wholesaler to sell in your boutique, that is perfectly valid and completely tax-exempt. But buying a fancy new couch for your office break room? No way. Even though you're a business, you are the final end consumer of that couch. It's definitely not for resale. If you try to use your resale certificate to buy that couch tax-free, you are straight up committing tax evasion. The certificate is strictly for inventory that is going to be resold. Now, what if you do business across state lines? Missouri has some pretty specific rules here. They do accept the Multi-State Tax Commission, or MTC form. However, if you are a Missouri-based retailer, you still have to provide your Missouri tax ID on that multi-state form. Now here's a quirky detail. Missouri is not a member of the Streamlined Sales Tax, or SST, governing board, so SST certificates aren't a standard thing here. But remember, if you're an out-of-state buyer with no physical presence in Missouri, you can simply use your home state sales tax ID to buy tax-free from Missouri vendors. Easy enough, right?
Section 4, Compliance and Common Mistakes. This is all about protecting your business.
Okay, there's this persistent myth floating around out there about a magical form called Form 149R, specifically for resale. Let me be perfectly clear based on our sources. Form 149R does not exist. It's a ghost. There is only the standard Form 149, and you just check the resale box on it. Some other common audit traps include leaving your tax ID blank or handing a vendor an unsigned certificate. An incomplete certificate gives you absolutely zero protection in an audit, guys. Every single field must be filled out. The Missouri state regulations define a really critical legal concept for sellers, and it's called good faith. Basically, if you are a vendor accepting a Form 149 from a buyer, you have to do so in good faith. That means if a toy store called Super Fun Toys tries to buy that office couch we talked about earlier from you using a resale certificate, well, you ought to know something is a little fishy. As a seller, you have the right, and honestly, the obligation, to refuse an exemption if the purchase clearly doesn't make sense for the buyer's business model. And once you do accept that certificate in good faith, you've got to keep it safe. In an audit, the burden of proof falls entirely on the seller to prove a sale was actually exempt. So you should maintain fully executed records of Form 149 for at least 3 years. Though I'll tell you, 5 years is heavily recommended by the Department of Revenue just to make absolutely sure you're bulletproof if a sales tax audit ever comes your way. Now, I've got a fantastic piece of good news for new business owners that we uncovered in the state regulations. Historically, businesses had to front a hefty cash bond just to get a sales tax license. Talk about a barrier to entry. But effective August 2018, sales tax bonds are no longer required for new businesses. That is huge. You only have to post a bond, which, by the way, can be super expensive since it's calculated at 2 times your average monthly tax liability if your account becomes delinquent and you fail to report and pay your taxes. So basically, just stay compliant, and you get to keep that capital in your pocket. Finally, Section 5, FAQs and final tips. Let's wrap this all up. A question we see a lot is about buying specific automotive parts. The crucial point here is that the standard Form 149 doesn't cover everything. If you happen to be a registered motor vehicle dealer purchasing tires or paying lead-acid battery fees for vehicles you're prepping to resell, you actually cannot use the standard Form 149. You have to use a totally separate document called Form 149T. I know, it's a super small detail, but getting it wrong will cause some major headaches down the line. And what happens if you intentionally buy personal items tax-free? Well, the penalties in Missouri are incredibly severe. Under Section 143.91, willfully attempting to evade sales tax can literally be charged as a felony. We're talking about fines of up to $10,000 and potentially up to 5 years in prison. It is absolutely, unequivocally, never worth it to play games with tax exemption. Just do it by the book. Which brings us to the end. The whole process is actually really straightforward if you just respect the sequence. Register for your tax ID first, fill out Form 149 completely and accurately, and hand it straight to your vendors. Doing this the right way legally slashes your upfront costs, completely prevents double taxation, and strongly protects your profit margins. So my final question to you is, now that you have the exact roadmap, what's stopping you from optimizing your inventory purchasing today? This explainer is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or financial advice. Please consult with a professional for specific guidance related to your business. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I wish you the absolute best with your business.